You've been lied to your whole life. You've been told to explain yourself, to defend yourself, to prove your worth in every argument, every meeting, every deal. But here's the brutal truth: every time you defend yourself, you lose power. Every word of explanation chips away at your authority. And Machiavelli, if he were alive right now, wouldn't waste a single breath defending himself. He'd flip the situation instantly, turning the attack into control. That's exactly what we're going to break down in this video: why you should never defend yourself, how that single shift changes everything, and how to apply it in parenting, family fights, school, work, and even business. This isn't theory, it's raw strategy for the world we live in today. So before we dive in, make sure you subscribe. Because this channel isn't about soft advice, it's about giving you the kind of brutally honest truths that actually work in real life. Hit that button now, and let's get straight into it. A toddler melts down in the middle of a supermarket because you said no to the candy. Your partner rolls their eyes and whispers that you're too strict. If you answer with "I had a rough day" or "I'm doing my best," you've accepted their judgment and invited an argument. Machiavelli in 2025 would step between the child and the crowd, set a tone, and close the frame: short, firm, unargued. He'd say aloud, once, "We leave now," and physically move. No explanations, no bargaining, no guilt. Later, in private, he'd reallocate responsibilities or make a change that demonstrates control: a different grocery route, a pre-shopping snack, so the next public incident is neutralized without public defense. The point: action replaces defense, visible authority and immediate corrective moves flip the power because you stop negotiating your competence in public. A 10-year-old asks, "Why can't I have a phone?" and launches into a list of reasons why other kids do. If you answer with a lecture, "Because studies say," you've turned the decision into a debate you will lose by volume. Modern Machiavelli treats the question as a bargaining position, not a truth-seeking mission. He gives a crisp conditional choice: you can have the phone when you can show me 4 weeks of responsibility, no snooping, homework done, and a weekly check-in. Until then, you don't need the justification. He never defends the rule, he converts it into a measurable test and leaves the child to chase criteria. That flips power because the child must perform to change the frame, rather than exhaust you with arguments. When an in-law publicly accuses your parenting or calls you harsh at a family dinner, the instinct is to explain yourself to preserve your image. That explanation is oxygen for more attacks. Machiavelli in the present would behave like a commander. He'd offer a neutral, almost bored acknowledgement, "Noted," and change the subject by proposing something decisive, e.g., "We'll all meet next Sunday to discuss schedules." Publicly disarming the argument by refusing to engage forces critics into either escalating, which makes them look petty, or withdrawing. Privately, he would shore up alliances, show evidence of his parenting system, and quietly remove future opportunities for public criticism. The way to win family arguments is to deny the stage that defense requires. A spouse accuses you of reckless spending in front of the kids, you instinctively defend each purchase and justify the reasons. That only makes you look irresponsible and weak. Machiavelli would not defend the past. He would propose a clean ritual that changes who controls the money going forward. From next month, we'll use a shared budget app and we'll both have to sign off on purchases above X. No explanations, no apologies that sound defensive, just an institution you control and a public commitment that makes future criticisms irrelevant because the mechanism, not your persona, is now on trial. Power shifts because you stop arguing about character and begin to control process. At a parent-teacher meeting where the teacher says your child isn't participating, you want to immediately refute, "No, they are engaged at home." That back and forth makes you look defensive and protective instead of strategic. Machiavelli would pivot the conversation from blame to leverage. Ask precise questions that expose expectations. What does participation look like in your rubric? Then propose a short-term experiment. We'll try this 3-week plan and then review. He doesn't try to prove innocence. He creates an action that will either validate the teacher or reveal unfairness. That turns you from a defensive parent into the one setting the terms of measurement, the person with power. A middle school rumor tags your child as the slacker of the class and you want to respond on social media or corner the rumor starter at pickup. Every defensive post amplifies the rumor. Machiavelli's modern playbook is mercilessly simple: mute the public noise and manufacture a counternarrative through accomplishments. He'd help the child join a visible club or lead a small school project and make sure the outcome is public. He never writes 10 posts defending reputation. He creates undeniable results and lets those results overwrite the rumor. Power is reclaimed by producing status rather than consuming attention in explanations. A student is accused of cheating during an online exam and faces an immediate Zoom hearing. Begging and long defenses look guilty. Frantic explanations create patterns that can be used against you. Machiavelli would ask one targeted question: where is the evidence? And demand procedure. If there's no evidence, the accusation collapses. If there is, he offers a short, strategic concession: I'll retake under supervision. That changes the conversation to a solution, not a trial. That minimal, forward-looking move flips the power because it reframes you as cooperative and controlled, not cornered. A college group project leader gets blamed for a poor presentation in front of the cohort and immediately explains every logistical failure. That fall-on-your-sword reaction convinces others of incompetence. Modern Machiavelli would instead say, calmly, I'll take it on and we'll be ready next meeting, then deliver a superior follow-up that visibly repairs the damage. He understands the currency of competence. You don't explain perceived failure, you convert it into the next visible success. That change in output, not defense, reestablishes your authority. A manager calls you out in a team meeting for a missed deadline and everyone looks at you. If you start listing excuses, commuting, overlapping tasks, you hand colleagues the narrative that you are frail. Machiavelli would make a short, non-defensive statement: I own it. Here's the immediate plan to fix it, and then outline steps and deadlines. Afterwards, you deliver faster than expected. The moment you stop explaining and start delivering, you flip the power. You become the person who resolves problems instead of the person who creates them. A coworker spreads a rumor in Slack that you took credit for joint work and you respond defensively with long private messages. Those messages are leaked. You look petty. Instead, Machiavelli would publicly thank the coworker for their contributions and then, in a separate channel, post the collaborative record and invite the team to a demo showing who did what. He doesn't apologize or justify, he reframes and documents. The public gratitude plus private documentation flips perception without feeding the fire. When your boss accuses you of a bad attitude during a performance review and you feel the need to justify every emotion, you risk appearing emotionally immature. Machiavelli would do something simple and cold: accept a single line of responsibility: I can work better. Then present a 6-week improvement plan with milestones and ask for feedback checkpoints. He minimizes the moral argument and makes it procedural. Power returns because you convert critique into a measurable project you control. In a toxic office where managers micropolice remote workers, employees spend hours defending themselves to HR in long emails. Machiavelli's modern approach is to stop arguing and start documenting: short, factual emails, copies of work, and a quiet meeting with an ally in leadership. He takes public heat offline, uses calm records to show trends, and then forces HR to react to facts, not feelings. You trade rhetorical defense for institutional leverage. Paperwork and process become your army. A client accuses your agency of overbilling in an email that is carbon copied to stakeholders. If you send a long invoice breakdown, you're playing on their field. Machiavelli reframes value. He acknowledges receipt, offers a one-sentence goodwill gesture if appropriate, and then pivots the conversation to results and options. We can restructure the package to meet your ROI target. Here are two choices. He makes the client choose and chase outcomes instead of arguing over numbers. Power flips because you define the metric that matters, ROI, not the line items. During negotiations, a competitor publicly tweets that your product is just overpriced junk. The reflexive move is to run a stats thread proving quality. That thread only legitimizes the smear. Machiavelli's tactic is to double down on positioning, release a bold, short campaign that targets premium buyers and creates scarcity or exclusivity. He neither disproves nor defends. He makes the market decide by offering an alternative narrative people can buy into. That way, the attack becomes noise while you own the identity of the customer who actually matters. A contract dispute where the other party points at a clause and calls you a bad actor tempts you to parse every line in long legalese. That only drags you into minutiae and signals guilt. Modern Machiavelli offers a deal reshaping move. Propose a clean amendment that solves the practical problem in exchange for a concession you value. The concession is calibrated to cost them little and to save your face. By reframing the fight into a trade, you avoid defensive justification and recover leverage through exchange. A startup founder faces a flurry of negative customer posts about a buggy release. Long public defenses read as denial and make the pile grow. Machiavelli would either issue a single, crisp statement acknowledging the issue and promising fast remediation, or he would stay silent and let the team quietly fix the problem while seeding positive case studies. Silence paired with hard corrective action or a brief admission plus compensatory moves flips the narrative without bogging the company in justification. When an in-law posts a passive-aggressive comment about your parenting choices on social media and relatives take sides, answering each comment spawns more. Machiavelli would publicly acknowledge with a neutral, almost bored reply, "We're figuring it out," and then use private messages to shore up family relationships. Simultaneously he'd create positive, visible family moments, posts where kids do something admirable, to change the public feeling. He never defends himself in the comments because every word is another skirmish line. A parent volunteer committee accuses you of pushing your agenda in PTA threads and online groups. Defending your intent online only inflames politics. Machiavelli registers the complaint, calls for a short, face-to-face meeting with a single, structured agenda, and insists on a vote on the proposal. He replaces argument with process, votes, time boxes, and measurable outcomes, and he forces others to defend their positions openly. Which is always harder than attacking anonymously. The framework shifts power to whoever sets the agenda. A student receives a harsh grade and immediately responds with excuses and blame to the professor. That reaction cements the professor's view. Machiavelli would instead coach the student to request a meeting with a specific agenda, clarification of the rubric, identification of concrete steps for improvement, and a proposal for extra work to demonstrate competence. The student stops defending and starts negotiating from a position of agency. The professor now sees the student as someone solving a problem, not begging for mercy. Every single scenario comes down to the same modern rule: the moment you begin explaining, you concede the frame. Machiavelli alive today wouldn't beg for understanding on messy public stages. He'd either refuse the stage, reframe with a short, strategic move, or replace defense with action that creates visible results. He'd use silence as armor, process as a weapon, conditional choices as leverage, and quick, measurable commitments as reputation repair. Be painfully clear: people will always prefer the loud block of certainty over the messy defense. so stop explaining and start engineering outcomes. When family tensions flare over parenting styles, explanations pour gasoline on the fire. A sibling tells you at dinner that you're too harsh or too soft. If you defend, you've made them judge and jury. Machiavelli wouldn't defend, he'd disarm the attack with indifference. That's noted, and then he'd pivot the conversation to something mundane yet controlled, like planning the next gathering. The brilliance of this is that you've robbed critics of their stage. Family arguments feed on your defensiveness, but when you don't bite, the critic looks petty. The insight: in family dynamics, whoever refuses to perform becomes the anchor. Defense is performance, silence is dominance. And the modern addition is this: families thrive on gossip, whispers, and who said what. If you give them a defense, they'll dissect it for weeks. If you give them nothing, their gossip has no blood to drink, and soon they return to tearing down someone else. Machiavelli today would master this art, starving the wolves until they turn on themselves. Children asking for privileges is one of the clearest modern arenas where defense kills authority. Why can't I have a phone? Everyone else does. Parents today often launch into studies, safety concerns, or financial reasoning. But every justification fuels more counterarguments. Kids are clever debaters. Machiavelli would turn it into a trial of proof. Show me responsibility for a month, chores, grades, honesty, and then you'll earn it. He doesn't explain why they don't deserve it now. He sets a bar they must reach. The insight: when you defend, the child wins the frame by forcing you to answer them. When you set conditions, they chase you. And modern parenting misses this too often because parents crave being seen as fair. Machiavelli would scoff. Fairness is a cage parents walk into, power is the tool that raises standards. When your child meets the bar, it's not because you defended your decision, it's because they bent their behavior to your will. At the workplace, being called out in a meeting for lateness, laziness, or poor output often tempts you to over-explain. You defend yourself with traffic stories, workload excuses, or health problems. But no one in that room remembers your reasons, they only remember that you explained, which is the mark of weakness. Machiavelli in today's corporate jungle wouldn't defend at all. He'd claim control in a single phrase: it won't happen again. Then, he'd over-deliver on the next project, showing through action what words could never salvage. The insight here is brutal: corporate worlds don't reward explanations, they reward visible results. Every word of defense is a chip out of your reputation. Every quiet demonstration of control is a brick laid into your authority. The people who defend themselves most at work are the ones managers quietly mark as replaceable. Business deals show the same psychology. When a competitor or client calls your offer too expensive or unreasonable, the amateur starts breaking down costs, explaining every line item. That's defense. And it destroys positioning. Machiavelli today would respond without flinch: we serve those who want the best. No defense, no cost breakdown, just reframing. The insight here is that business isn't about truth, it's about perception. The moment you explain, you validate their complaint as truth worth answering. The moment you reframe, you dictate reality. And this is especially true in modern markets, flooded with noise. Whoever spends their time defending is already bleeding market share. Machiavelli would know that in 2025, the only safe position is to dictate terms so ruthlessly that even when attacked, you rise by refusing to acknowledge the attack as real. At the workplace, being called out in a meeting for lateness, laziness, or poor output often tempts you to over-explain. You defend yourself with traffic stories, workload excuses, or health problems. But no one in that room remembers your reasons, they only remember that you explained, which is the mark of weakness. Machiavelli in today's corporate jungle wouldn't defend at all. He'd claim control in a single phrase, "It won't happen again." Then, he'd over-deliver on the next project, showing through action what words could never salvage. The insight here is brutal. Corporate worlds don't reward explanations, they reward visible results. Every word of defense is a chip out of your reputation. Every quiet demonstration of control is a brick laid into your authority. The people who defend themselves most at work are the ones managers quietly mark as replaceable. Machiavelli would see this and act swiftly: speak little, deliver much, and let silence be your best PR. In the toxic ecosystem of workplace gossip, when a coworker accuses you of stealing credit or failing the team, most scramble to write paragraphs of Slack messages defending themselves. This is gasoline on fire. Machiavelli today would never type desperation into chat logs. Instead, he would quietly collect evidence, document his contributions, and then choose a visible moment, perhaps a presentation or a client call, to highlight his role naturally, without pointing fingers. He would thank the accuser publicly in passing, knowing gratitude makes them look small and bitter, while the evidence of his work cements his credibility. The lesson here is harsh: defense validates rumors. But proof delivered at the right moment buries them. In performance reviews, employees often try to explain away every critique. The boss says, "You lack leadership presence," and the weak response is a laundry list of small accomplishments meant to prove otherwise. Machiavelli would never lower himself to that. Instead, he would nod once, claim ownership, and immediately set a bold plan: "Give me the next project lead and I'll show you." He wouldn't argue his worth in words, he'd demand the stage to prove it in results. Modern workplaces respect boldness far more than defensiveness. The insight here: defending is begging, but proposing is commanding. When a teacher says your child is disengaged, the reflex is to defend. They participate at home, they're just shy. But defending creates a narrative that you're an overprotective parent. Machiavelli wouldn't feed that. He'd pivot immediately: "Show me your definition of participation." By forcing clarity, he transforms criticism into criteria. He'd then set a short-term experiment to meet that criteria, turning the teacher into a silent partner in the test. No defense, just forward motion. The insight is that teachers, bosses, and even peers have less power when you stop defending and start demanding terms. Children often come home wounded by rumors, being called lazy or dumb. Parents rush to defend: "You're not dumb, you're smart." But the child sees through that: it's empty reassurance. Machiavelli's method in the modern household would be to engineer a counterweight. Enroll the child in a visible competition, give them a chance to shine publicly, or help them build a skill that changes perception. He wouldn't defend with words at all. He'd orchestrate proof. The insight is chilling but true. In modern social hierarchies, especially among children, image is power, and power doesn't come from parental defense, it comes from undeniable displays of capability. A student accused of cheating has two choices: defend endlessly or redirect. The defensive student writes pages of emotional pleas, the Machiavellian student demands clarity: where's the evidence? That sharp question places the burden on the accuser. And if evidence exists, he doesn't grovel. He reframes: "I'll retake under supervision, let's settle this quickly." He converts the narrative from guilt to resolution. The insight here is that in institutions, innocence isn't the currency, control of process is. Whoever defines the next step holds the power. In group projects, blame is a constant weapon. Students often defend themselves endlessly, reciting all the times they contributed. But Machiavelli wouldn't bother. He'd take the blame silently, seize control of the follow-up, and then dominate the next task with undeniable quality. He'd emerge as the leader not because he defended himself, but because he converted blame into authority. In modern schools, leadership belongs not to the loudest defender but to the person who grabs control when the group is fractured. Rumors at work spread fast, accusations of poor conduct, whispers of arrogance, claims of incompetence. The average employee defends with frantic emails, meetings, and emotional clarifications. Machiavelli wouldn't give a single breath to defense. Instead, he'd pivot attention by creating a new achievement, a deal closed, a problem solved, that forces peers to talk about that instead. In today's attention economy, people don't remember who defended themselves well, they remember who produced something worth talking about. The insight is brutal. You don't out-argue a rumor, you bury it with noise of your own creation. In negotiations, defense is fatal. When told your offer is overpriced, most scramble to defend. Our costs are high because of X, Y, Z. This makes you sound desperate. Machiavelli's modern move is to nod and reframe. We're not for everyone. We serve those who demand quality. That flips the dynamic. The client now has to decide if they're part of the elite group you've just defined. Modern business is about frames, not facts. And the one who refuses to defend always wins the frame. When accusations of overbilling hit your inbox, a natural response is to defend line by line. But the client now sees you as guilty until proven innocent. Machiavelli wouldn't touch the trap. He'd redirect. We can restructure this to meet your ROI goals. Here are two paths. The fight about the bill disappears because you've shifted the discussion to outcomes. In today's fast-paced market, clients don't care about explanations, they care about future wins. By refusing to defend and forcing them into a choice, you turn a hostile situation into a controlled negotiation. Online reputation is fragile, and in the modern era, one post can trigger a wave of criticism. The instinct is always to defend, post clarifications, issue apologies, write endless statements. Machiavelli wouldn't touch that game. He'd either ignore it entirely or, if he responded, he'd do it with dominance. Believe what you want, results speak louder. He'd then make sure results followed immediately, a product launch, a visible success, a calculated move that proves relevance. Modern mobs feed on defense, starve them and they disperse. When a client accuses a salesperson of overpromising, the salesperson who defends loses credibility. Machiavelli's modern salesperson would never explain features or argue about promises. He'd say, if this feature is vital, let's build a trial plan that proves we can meet the outcome. He pulls the client into a test where results are the judge, not words. In modern commerce, clients trust outcomes, not defenses. And whoever redirects to action owns the deal. Even within families, financial disputes trigger defense. A spouse saying you waste money usually prompts defensive lists. It was for the kids, it was necessary. But those lists make you look reckless. Machiavelli would bypass the character attack by introducing a process. From next month, no purchase above X without both our approval. No defense, no debate, just control. This is the insight modern families miss. Defending choices digs graves. But redefining systems secures peace and power. Social media arguments at family level also prove the rule. When in-laws criticize your choices publicly, defending only prolongs the war. Machiavelli would post a neutral line, "We're figuring things out our way," and then use private channels to strengthen alliances, all while producing visible moments of family success that quietly override criticism. He would never give oxygen to critics. He'd let their noise look like obsession while he calmly parades results. Every one of these scenarios proves the same modern principle: defense is weakness because it acknowledges the accuser's authority. Machiavelli alive today would never explain himself in parenting, family, school, work, or business. He would act, redirect, and produce results that erase the need for defense entirely. In this world, explanations are cheap, but action is currency. The one who refuses to defend but instead engineers outcomes will always be the one who holds the power. Power today doesn't belong to the loudest voice, the endless explainer, or the chronic defender. It belongs to the one who refuses to be pulled into petty debates, who flips weakness into authority by never justifying, only acting. Parenting, family disputes, school pressures, the grind of work, and the ruthless world of business, all of them punish the defender and reward the strategist. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, and if he lived in our time, he'd sharpen it even further. Stop explaining yourself, stop wasting breath on proving your worth, and let your silence, your action, and your control speak louder than any defense ever could. That's how power is kept. That's how power is grown. If you want more of these brutally honest strategies, stripped of sugarcoating and told exactly how they work in the real world, then subscribe now. Don't defend. Don't wait. Just act. Hit that button and step further into the world where power is not begged for. It's taken.